people will be visiting with us today, but we're going to record anyway.
It's so hard now that we're all remote and, working at different times to find that time that works great for everyone. So we want to thank all of you who have contributed slides content. So we shared a survey earlier in the semester, and we were just asking about some things that people wanted. And there was a lot of requests for Google because so many of us have integrated it into our classrooms, whether it be in person or online or live online. So we reached out to some that said they would be willing to share. Thank you guys. And we've just got some great different ways that people are utilizing some of the Google tools in the classroom. So here is a list of our contributors. We have some live with us today. We have some that we've previously recorded, and those videos are just in the slides, and you'll be able to access them later. And then we've got some that have shared content but aren't here with us today. So just a real mix of collaborative sharing time. We'll be doing this exact same session again on Thursday. Mm-hmm. So feel free to, come again Thursday or access this again later. So we want to go ahead and get started. Welcome to everybody here. We're so glad to be in the classroom with you virtually.
If you want a copy of these slides, then you can go to bit.ly/DLD-Google, and it is case sensitive when you're using bit.ly. So it's capital DLD-G Google. For those of you who are contributing, this was actually our original title slide on this, but we decided to keep it in because if you were giving students an assignment, you could do the same thing. We went through and put names on each of the slides, or you could put group names on each of the slides, and then we had a note for them at the beginning saying, okay, go ahead, add your content to where you see your name, add more slides if you want to. So you could do student assignments this same way. So we just left it in as a hot tip for those who might be joining us today. And then Fanny, we're going to turn it over to you. You were using Google Drive, you said, so that you could organize your student groups.
So yes, I share 3 different ways that I'm using Google Drive. The student groups will be on the next slide. So on this slide, the first thing I do is I add Google documents with an answer of the questions of the syllabus quiz. So in the syllabus quiz, there's a questions and they need to go in their Google Drive to find the answer. So it's share them how they can find what I share with them, that shared with me folder, because I add all my students, Maricopa, Google, Maricopa, like meid@maricopa.edu addresses inside this document, and they can only access if they're signing. On the right, it's a spreadsheet that is shared with all the classroom. So in this case, there's 2 options. Either I add, again, all my students' Google accounts using the roster. It's just a copy paste in the roster. It's not that difficult. Or I use the share with everyone. And I just found that if you use your Maricopa Google Drive, when you do share with the organizations, it will share with everyone with a Maricopa address. So it will share with your students. So just a little tip, if you want to avoid them using their personal Gmail address, you can use that. Go on your Maricopa account first. Just a little note, when I ask them to fill a collaborative work on a spreadsheet or on the document, I still request them to download the document and submit them on Canvas. And it's just because sometimes it's faster to grade, but also it's avoid if there's anything that happened with the file after they fill the work, I have the proof that they did it. So as sometimes there's a lot of students working on the same document, I found it like a safety.
Yeah, we saw that a lot in Basecamp when we had people working on the common slide deck. One person would turn the whole slide deck fluorescent green or something. So I can imagine what they could do to your document.
Yeah, it's happened. So this is my team folder. So I have a lot of projects, including in online class. So what I do 3 steps. My first steps, I'm thinking about all the documents that each team will need to submit. So let's say there's a report to submit for a project. I prepare a template. If there's a tables to fill, I prepare a spreadsheet, template, etc. After I have created those templates at the little number A, I create the team folders. For example, there's an example of Team A for the airdrop project, Team B, Team C, Team D. And I share each folder with the teammates. And that's where it's important that they know how to find the share with me folder, because I really want to restrict the access for the teamwork and not to let it open to anyone with a link, because sometimes they share the link or things like that, and I really want to make sure on who can access those files. And yes, I send a message to students when I share with them, so they also can access the link, but it's only shared with the students who are being added to those folders. And now that I have my templates and that I have my team folders, I create a copy of my templates. So you can select all of them at the same time, click right, copy. I make a copy of the 4 of them. And again, I select the 4 of them, click right and move to, and I move them to the team A. And I have to redo those steps for each team. So it takes a little bit of time, but I think it's worth it.
That was actually going to be my question. How time consuming is that? Because I know life is full of trade-offs. It's a cost-benefit thing, but how long does it take, do you think?
I think it saves you a lot of time, especially if you use templates after that, because you give them a lot of structure. So you save a lot of time when grading, when you prepare a lot in advance.
Yeah.
At the end, I think it's a good investment in time. And for team, I also request them to download the document and submit on Canvas. That's mainly for the due date. So I know when they have submitted the documents, that's what the documents look like at the time they submit it. If I wait a few days, they could have make some changes. But especially for report, I usually grade them directly on the document, give them comments directly on the document. So after that, they can go through my comments and make some updates. On the next slide, I share some little discussion on the use of the team folder. The first thing is I found that we need to give time to students to understand how Google Drive works, how to access their Share With Me folder, how to access their Maricopa account.
Do you do a low stakes thing like the first week to get them used to it? Or do you just throw them in but be patient?
So that's usually the syllabus questions that is hidden that help me to see if the students were able to access or not. After that, when they begin to work in groups, what I do is I reshare the link of their folder inside each WebEx space that I use for the team. So I give them different ways to access it at the beginning. Make sure to share the links to folder files that are correct. Yes, so sometimes I got some requests from students, requests to access, and I said, maybe I made a mistake, so I click yes. And in fact, I don't know how they got a link from another team. And after, so yes, I said, don't click too fast on, okay, yes, share with you, because sometimes the mistakes, it's another mistake. They should not access this folder. So just a little feedback. I got that last week, so that's why I share.
I'm sure there's always hiccups at the start, but it probably smooths out over the semester.
Yeah, you need to take some time to really check which students you put in which team on the people in Canvas, and put the same students in the WebEx space and the same students in the Google folder. And check twice before you send a little message.
I suspect I would need a spreadsheet. I need a chart somewhere to show me. Did I do this? Check.
Copy file, update links. Yeah, sometimes just make sure that every semester you use a new file. So if you copy the template, that will be good. But sometimes we use the same activity, and it's really important that I check that I don't share the file that was shared with the previous group, the group last semester, because there's still the name of the student and it's already filled with all the answers. About the time, so it takes time, yes, to set up a little bit, but it gives me control. It gives me access of their teamwork at any time, and it works very well for my online teamwork and online students and teamwork. Yes, I got a few deleted files or files that have been moved from one folder to another folder. It's happened. It's never on purpose. Always the students reach me and say, I think I did something, and I was able always to fix the mistake because they download on Canvas. I always have a document that is almost a few days that has been made not a long time ago. So we were always able to fix that.
I was just curious, what sort of systems have you used before? You like this better than what did you try before you did this?
I think we used the copy. So we will give them a template on the instruction, and when you click on it, they will copy the template and they will work on the template, and they will share with their teammate by themselves. And after that, sometimes they will share with me this file, or sometimes they will just submit on Canvas. And I found this easier for me to track. I always know where are the reports, I always know where are the tables. It's easy for me to do that and make them copy templates.
Yeah, I imagine I would definitely have to make myself a checklist if I were going to do this, because I could imagine being paranoid that I'd be missing a step somewhere along the way. But we've seen the way you organize your class, so I have no fear that you get every student every time. Yeah, and if you have any questions for Fanny, we're going to have some Q&A at the end. So take notes write down your questions or put them in the chat and we'll come back to them. You may have read last week's Tech Tuesday. Alex couldn't be here with us today because apparently she has 3 jobs and is taking care of her mother and 10 million other things. But she did sit down and we did a call. In fact, I was able to split it into 3 videos. There's some other ones that are not Google related, but she's so interesting to talk to that I'll post those at another date. But this isn't so much how to use Google Meet, but how Google Meet ended up being the right tool for her to do her student conferences. So it's about 8 minutes. You could give that a listen anytime you have some leisure time.
And I think we have Terry here with us. Terry, do you want to share a little bit how you're using Jamboard?
Yeah, we're excited that you're here because we didn't think you're going to be able to make it this afternoon.
So Jamboard, or I say, is it Jamboard or Jamboard? So I like it for all the classes. I was using it live online, and then I started experimenting it with just regular online and in face-to-face classes. Students don't have to have an account. So one thing, I don't do it for anything that really requires a lot of thought. I can do something like on readings, or just to get some information. Like today I did a thing with drama, was we were introducing it, and I just had them throwing up what they knew about drama. What are the characteristics of drama in literature? And
so it's a quick take the pulse kind of thing.
Yeah, and so it just, what's really nice though is everybody participates. And I like this because that's like the one that the Google, the one that was just being talked about at the time. I mean, if you're really, really busy, but you want to make sure that they're all participating, this works really well. And I had one student today, they left their phone at home, I can't imagine, and their laptop as well. I have laptops in the room, but instead of like them firing up, a computer in the room, I had a student that actually just went ahead and they just shared the computer. Because you can do that. It is anonymous, so I always tell them make sure they put their first name and last initial so that they get credit for participating. And then as soon as I'm done, I save a copy. And it depends. If I don't care if students go back and add, but if they're getting credit for an activity that's based, like today it didn't matter, but I've done it with activities where it's based on something they were supposed to read, so it was an accountability piece. And I don't want them to go back and be able to add it afterwards. You can't trace the history, but it's so nice because you can go in and put elements. You can put a background if you want. But the biggest thing that I like about it is the students will participate, even some shy ones. And I don't know about you, but I've got some students with some extreme anxiety that they actually have DRS accommodations and stuff. And they post and have amazing ideas, but they will not speak up in class. It's very, very difficult. They will work more in their groups. They're more comfortable, but this allows me to highlight and, you can praise what they've said. So it's really fun. When I made this, I was doing it for last week's class, and they had some readings and that they had to do, and there was a debate that followed. So basically they were putting some ideas up about the positions based on their reading. So the one was the address, and the other one was a W.E.B. Du Bois's article where he was talking about why Washington was wrong about his stance. And so it's interesting looking at that. And that one of the big things they looked at was education. But you're able to put pictures in and stuff, and then they just cover it with their sticky notes. This is another example of one from last spring with the themes in The Great Gatsby. They've been doing readings, and we were almost done with the book, and so we were talking about themes, and so they just started throwing themes up there because they were going to have to choose a theme to write about. Mm-hmm. And so it was very interesting looking at that. The one thing that happens, some of them will start, instead of the post-it notes, I like the post-it notes, but some of them will start drawing. And you can see where a student drew in that.
Yes, I can.
And then the other thing, as they enter, they go in one spot. You have to tell them to move them to make sure that something doesn't get covered up. And so I always look when they're done and move and make sure there's nothing covering another one up. But you can see that I was having them put their names in. I tell them just their first name and last initial, but some of them will still put their full names in there. It is really interesting looking at it. So I have a lot of fun with this, and the students like it. I was asking them about it, and they like how fast and how quickly we get a lot of information out there, and it's so easy to set up. The only drawback is you can only put a little bit on the post-it notes, the sticky notes that are on here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I love it for something like themes like this. Say a student had identified the theme that they were going to be using and ended up wanting to change their mind or go back to the brainstorm and see what others had posted. So it's, it's a great way for that quick think, just like in the classroom when they're sharing on Post-its or something like that. And it's a great collection of them afterwards.
Yeah, and the thing is too is like I use the boards. I use sticky notes and have them put them and move them around the room as well. And so this is just if you don't have a lot of time, this allows you to capture something really quickly. I have fun with it. I started it last spring, but I asked my students last spring what was one of their favorite activities, and they said they liked this because they still had the link. They could go back. And look, and it just depends on what they're doing.
Well, Terry, I have a question for you, and then I have a question for everybody. And my question for you actually is the same as what I asked Fanny, which is, do you do a warm-up activity, like something at the very beginning that doesn't necessarily have content related, just so that they can practice and see what it's like? Or is it easy enough?
The first time we do it, because especially the first time I did it in this fall in the face-to-face class, I wasn't even sure how well it would work. We did this little activity so we could see how it would work. And I did figure out that if they have the Canvas app on their phones, you can access the link really quickly. One thing I haven't figured out is if I could come up with the link is real long. I want to get a shortened link, and I'm not sure. Do you know if you could do that, Mary? Because I haven't looked.
It's funny because some of the Google tools automatically say, do you want a shorter link? And I don't know that Jamboard's one of them.
Jamboard didn't offer that, yeah. And so, but that was the one thing I was worried about. If they, like when it was the live face-to-face, they're all in, they could see it, and they have their Canvas courses up. So if they're on computers, then it works really well. Now I did it in a regular online class as well, where there were some questions. So instead of a discussion board, it was more like they were assigned something that they had to answer. They all had a different question. So they had gone in, and we had multiple pages. They'd go find their question, and then they'd answer it. And so it was like a discussion, but they told me they had fun with it. I'm just experimenting with it.
Yeah, I'm going to jump back for a second to the chat because Juliet says she hearts Bitly. Obviously, I also heart Bitly because you saw it earlier in the slide deck that you can get today's slides. But you can certainly use a shortener like tinyURL or like Bitly if you're going to do that, or QR codes for that matter. If they're mostly working on their phones, then you could have a QR code up that they could scan, which we've done before.
That's a good idea.
And the question I had for the audience is lots of you actually said you have used Jamboard, and I've seen it used differently than this. Like some of the math folks showed it in one of the LOL sessions we did in fall 21. So how else are you using it? Or is this basically the same way that you are using it? And either in the chat or unmute your microphone. I would like to hear. I did include, because in a few cases today, we have faculty saying, here's this cool thing that I do. I included this because on the Ditch That Textbook site, they had a blog post on how to use it and ideas on how to use it. Okay, so Mary Ellen says, similar to Terry, Jen's got small groups with their own board. I could see using it with small groups. What we saw with math is that they actually had a Jamboard with like pieces on it, and they used it as kind of a multiple choice. They were able to move things around. So I think that it could work for very different subject areas.
And Karen Tara is going over solving equations. Yeah, Carousel Jamboard. We've done some group activities with pulling all of our ed students together, and we had a carousel of 6 different Jamboards. And we had each faculty starting on, one faculty started on one started on 2 with a group of students. And as they finished, they rotated to the next Jamboard, and then they rotated to the next Jamboard. And they reviewed the content and then added content. So whatever that time frame was, they could get to as many Jamboards as they could. But then that was a collection of all of the groups. So we kind of did like you said, a carousel. And
Thank goodness Jen is here, because if Mary Ellen had put that up and Jen was the only one presenting, I would have been like, I don't know what you're talking about. Carousel Jamboard, no idea.
but it was
Now
a
I
great collection because all of the groups were able to touch at least 4 or 5 of the Jamboards, and each of the Jamboard contained 4 or 5 group brainstorming or idea sharing.
And since we have Mary Ellen, her slide is actually next. And it appears that Mary Ellen's like our jack of all trades, because she said, well, I can talk about whatever Google tool you want. So
Yeah, and I'll probably start by going off script at some point, or maybe just go off script in the middle.
that's quite all right. We don't have a script.
As any good educator might do, I think I'll start with the end of my slide or the end in mind, and then work my way back in sort of a reverse design presentation here. And just to provide context, I have just images of a couple of texts that these activities revolve around. So even though I think I was introduced on the slide set as critical reading faculty, these are actually examples of what we would do in a more entry-level reading course, Reading 100. And in that course, one of the memoirs that we use is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. And as Fanny was discussing this sort of organizational structure that she really appreciates, that Google Folders and Google Drives afford her. It's efficient, it's organized. We, in the Reading 100 course, actually use a lot of Google Documents that force students to make a copy or open a copy. So I don't know if you want to click on any of those links and show people what those look like. That's why they're there. But the first document it's just forcing you to do that right now. Would you like to make a copy of Getting to Know Trevor Noah? So what Mary just did was click on a Google link that students have access to, say, for example, in a Canvas site. And what you'll notice is that the instructions are already populated, as are the questions. And this can be really, really important for a couple of purposes. Number one, as I said before, this is a more introductory, some people use the term developmental level course. Some of our students, if we were to ask them to cut and copy text or information from a Canvas page, drop it into a Google Doc, save it, upload it to their drive, and then reload it to Canvas, our inboxes would be filled with iterations of how do I do that? And
Or classes would be empty because they dropped.
Exactly. So we'd waste a lot of time solving simple problems. So thankfully, when we were designing what heretofore was only a face-to-face experience, Reading 100 was always face-to-face, because sometimes we have students who say, what is the Control-Alt-Delete function on my computer? Very, very sort of lower skill tech literacy skill. In our hybrid experience, we learned this make a copy example. So one of the things that I want you to stare at on this slide is the 2 links down there, and you can just hover over them, Mary. You don't have to click on them. But if you notice that they are almost identical links, except for the last /. The last / on the original document says edit ? USP = sharing. And the second link just as copy. And that's actually what you do to force students to make a copy. You get a link, and then you literally delete everything up to that / type copy, and then use that link, and Google forces you to make a copy. So it's a super efficient tool, a super efficient way to get students to focus on the content and the knowledge, and not the copy and pasting and the sort of, managerial end of the assignment. So we're huge fans in reading of the make a copy Google Doc, embedding them in Canvas.
Well, the more invisible the technology is, the more they're focused on the learning.
Exactly. And it's efficient, right? And I think I hear that from Fanny too, when she was like I'm my brain is popping about that, making teams and getting kids from the beginning, organizing them and forcing them to use their Google tools. So that leads me to the second, or the beginning of this slide, which is an example of project-based learning. So I am a huge proponent of project-based learning. In class, I spend time doing things like learning the components of, the course competencies and et cetera. But then once we're done learning those course competencies, we want to do things that are project-based. So this is an example of a symposium project, right? And basically, one of the anchor texts that I would use in this Reading 100 course is Hole in My Life. It's an amazing memoir by a super famous children's book author named Jack Gantos, who surprisingly smuggled some tons of hash into the United States to pay for college and got caught and spent some time in federal prison when he was like 18. So the subject matter is super interesting for college students, and it leads us to think about the prison system and its multi-layers and complex issues. And what I want my students to be able to do is to be able to be inquisitive, be curious, demonstrate that they've got academic literacy skills, that they can research an idea of their generating and then present it in a way that is higher level. So this document that I just shared in here demonstrates that parts of it, and you can see in bold that there are parts that say individual responsibility, but group responsibility, right? So there are parts of this very large project that I am monitoring on an individual level, but then there are parts of this very large project that I am monitoring on a group level, which leads me to Google Slides. And you can probably just go back to this. You don't have to use my Google slide version history here in this slide, Mary. We can probably just look at the version history of this presentation, because if you do not know, that is the advantage of Google Slides or any Google tool over any external Google tool. We can always look at version history. So I think all of you know that the bane of the existence of a student in a group project is, oh my gosh, I got in this group and I'm the only one doing anything, right? But we're all getting credit for my work. I'm seeing Karen shake her head and shake her head. And this is the beautiful part of version history, because I can go as an instructor and, say, hey, Joe, you said everybody participated equally on your feedback form, but when I went to the version, I noticed that you did all the work. Can we have a conversation about that? So although I also am very transparent with my students and let them know that there is a version history, therefore they should all equitably contribute, and if there are problems, to be transparent about that. So they're amazing collaborative tools. They can really support project-based learning, and it allows you as the instructor to focus more on that content knowledge, use yourself as an expertise, and then allow the tool to do the heavy lifting for what previously used to be really complicated with photocopies and versions and, oh, I forgot my flash drive at home, so we don't have the current presentation, and all that drama of the earlier 2000s and 90s.
Maybe that's why I never taught online, didn't know enough about it. And if I'm jumping up and down in my seat, it's not that I'm not excited about Mary Ellen's, but ever since Jennifer Voss was in our base camp, was it summer 2020, Jen, or was it later than that?
It was in August of last year, August 2021.
She put up her student engagement slide and said, oh, I make escape rooms for my students. And I want to talk to her and pick her brain. So here we go. Today's our day.
All right. Well, the escape room, and thank you so much for pulling over these slides. I really appreciate it. So the escape rooms are a lot of fun. I use Google Form to create them. I've only ever used them as asynchronous content. Well, that's not true. I used it in a live online, and I'll explain that in a second. But I think you could use it in a traditional class too. And maybe what I would do is divide up the students, and then rather than have them like punch in a code, I would have them come and chat with me first. And then I would give them the code. But anywho, so that makes sense. Yeah, so like here's an example. I just pick something super lame. So, and I'm a very nerdy person, so it's easy for me to do this. But I'll do like Harry Potter or Twilight, or I've done The Office. Sometimes too, like when I don't know the students all that well yet, I'll lay off I won't let my true colors out until a little bit later in the semester. So I was going to share with you guys one that I have used, and I just thought it would be easier just to show you the form. So this is one that I actually did do in the live online setting. And what this is the page where you build the escape room. So it's just in your Google Forms, and then you build each section becomes a page. So in that, this is what I did for a final exam review last semester in nursing. So in this, what I had them do was I had them all meet me on WebEx. I put them in breakout rooms. They worked on this together, and then whoever, the group that escaped the room first won a little prize. But I always do some little introduction on the first page, explaining that this is, and we did this on a Friday night. So, I said the only way to escape this Friday night nonsense and get back to your weekend is to work together and show off your skills. I always have them put their full name in, because that's what we see on the other side, that they have submitted it. So when I assign this as asynchronous work, it's usually to like prepare for a lab or something. So I'll attach a few points to it, and then that way I can see who's turned it in. In this case, since they were working together and, working towards a little prize, I wanted to make sure they put each other's name in here. Then I do and I always just copy and paste an escape room basically, and then I just tweak it. So I always put on my second page explaining how it's going to work. So I say, you're going to pick the right answer to the multiple choice question, whichever one you pick, then you go through, and at the end of it, you'll put in the secret code, and it will advance you to the next section. So then I use like each section to talk about something geared towards whatever I'm trying to teach them. So this was a final exam review, so there was actually a lot of sections on it. But these questions, I just put in drug calculation questions, and it's very easy on Google Forms to pull in other images and things like that to kind of help them work through. And then at the end of each section, they go in and they would type in whatever code that they got from selecting CADB or whatever it was. So I just do that for each section. And you can see like on this one, I embedded lectures into it. I usually use WebEx to pre-record my lectures, and then this comes through as a YouTube video. Mm-hmm. And then what's really nice, when I assign this to them in Canvas, I actually just embedded it straight into the form. So then the students go through and they can click through and answer and do the escape rooms this way. But when I'm really feeling festive for it, I'll like I did one where I had to escape from the 90s, so I put on my best like Clueless outfit and used like a bunch of 90s memes and things like that. But even though it's just multiple choice questions and embedded lectures, for whatever reason, the students love them. So you can see on this one, I went with everything Harry Potter and just chose questions, related to that. And I try to bring whatever theme into it. And I always get really positive feedback.
Do you want to talk about the key on the Google Forms is making sure that it's like a quiz, like they have to get the correct code, right?
Oh, yes, correct.
I think that's key. That's just like making sure that it's self-grade. So if the answer was A, B, D, F, we have to submit it in that order to unlock the next section.
Yeah. So when you set it up, but like on this one, like I said, I have the little lecture embedded. But if you picked a wrong answer here, so let's say that the student selected B on this one, and then they do B, B, CC as the code. And when they hit next, it won't let them progress to the next room until they get that code correct.
See, this is interesting to me too, because it speaks to personalized learning and adaptive learning, where you could make their grade based on how many levels they can unlock. And the questions get more complex the further they go. So if they can make it through to the end, they get an A. If they only make it through the basics, they get a C, and somewhere in between. So
Yeah,
that would be a fun way to.
yeah, that would be that would be fun to do that. But yeah, they've been a lot of fun. And what I do is just on my, I had a bunch of them on at the school I taught at before, but unfortunately I lost access to them when I lost that email address. So I haven't done as many of them here. I just haven't had the time yet. But once you create the first one, it's super easy to do subsequent ones, because you just leave, like I'll just copy this one. And so when I go to my Google Forms, I just make a copy of one, and then I just change everything. And, you know, if I wanted to change the answer here, I'll just go in and click this, make the change on the answer key, and then just go down to this part and update my correct answer text. Because I thought I was super clever, and I realized at the last college I was teaching at that students were hip to my tricks, and so they would just write down like CAAB and then on the next one. So I did have to start just making sure that when I recreated them, I mixed up the answers and things like that. The first one takes a while to set up, but if somebody was interested in it, I would be more than happy to just make you like a co-editor, or kind of make like a blank template one that I could send out.
That was exactly what I was going to ask. If you happen to have a template laying around somewhere, you could add it to these slides, and then we could all have your blank. We can all ride your coattails.
Yes, absolutely. I'll try to. I can probably just go in on like one of those ones and clear it, strip it out pretty well, and then I'd be able to share that with you. Sorry for the kind of rough explanation of that, but
no,
there's so much to show, but I'm trying to keep it short.
Warned us about that, and so I grabbed from when you had put the slide up last summer that you said, go to YouTube and you'll find something. So I don't know if you have one that you particularly like that isn't one of these two. These just seem like a good mix to me. One of these is 23 minutes, but it's like basic. And the other one seems like you have to know some Google tricks to be able to use it. So a little more advanced, but it's shorter. So I threw these two in here, but Jennifer, if you have one that you really like, maybe you can add that link to this at some point.
Yeah, I'll try to remember. I can't even, because I can't remember the exact one I looked at. And sometimes it's kind of like Canvas for me too, because I've ended up taking on kind of more than I thought I would originally this semester and everything. So sometimes with Canvas, I'm not sure how to do something. So even with this, I would just kind of Google like, how do I add a YouTube to a Google form? And then you can find like little snippets if you're looking for, so, it was my experience with this was just kind of pieced together from, this is what I want to do. I wonder if there's a way to do it. So I actually might check these out too. And maybe there's something else out there that I don't know about.
You can give them your thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Karen, I saw in the chat that Karen, you've already got her excited about this because she said she's going to, come hell or high water, she's going to try this before the end of the semester. If you had any interest, I also put in a link to the Ditch That Textbook site because they have 40 plus free digital escape rooms, and they say they have a step-by-step guide. I haven't tried the step-by-step, but you guys can check it out and see how the guide is. And then if Karen wasn't busy enough building her escape rooms, she's also working on choice boards.
So for the choice boards, just like Jennifer just said, I want to do this. How? And then I started just like, okay, I might do this, I might do that, and then maybe I can do that. So that's how I started with this. I wanted to start doing the choice boards, and then I just decided to make post-it notes. This one that you see with the post-it notes was my first one. And then I expanded to other topics. So choice boards, I bet you guys are super familiar with this right now. You can have them with different activities or with the same activity, different topics. So for the first one, I just put the different topics and it was just the same activity. It was just building a graph. You need to shift the curves one way or the other depending on the case. So what I did is put different topics, and this one, just like Fanny said at the beginning, I just try to keep the topics current, so these are the latest ones that I have. For example, that pink one over there talks about gouging prices on the COVID home tests. And this other one on the top, the orange one, is about the decline in demand for bikes. So each one of these, as you click on the link, you pick the activity and you select different topics. In this case, it's again just about building graphs, moving lines or curves, or setting price ceilings or floors, or whatever the case is. You click on the topic and the topic will take you. You see in the orange one over there in the background has all the instructions below that one. So
This guy.
yes, that one. So it has all the instructions, and they are supposed to draw the graph over here, answer the questions and everything. But basically it's the same activity. Whereas for the other one, in the one for elasticities, they pick if they want to analyze something or create something. So then it's a change in activity. And for that one, depend on what they want. I have the questions already set, ready to fill up the answers, or the space for them to create the new item.
I think this taps into what we've all talked about for a long time. Different students learn differently, and different students can demonstrate their learning on the same topic in different ways.
Yes, exactly. And I've seen a lot of students that, especially in our field, you can learn things by either a very abstract equation, or maybe visual to a graph, or maybe just by theory and making sense of the words. So there are different ways to get the knowledge. So yeah, it lends to get it from one way or the other. So I just love these sessions that we have right now, because right now I just learned from Mary Ellen that you can just force the students to make a copy. I just like right now, guys, right now, that you can force the students to make a copy instead of putting all the instructions like I used to. This is how I used to do it. Like, make a copy of this document and then upload it. Well, now I know that I don't have to do this. I can just like straightforward copy and then upload it. So yeah, it's just fairly easy. Let them choose the topic that you want, or let them choose different activities. Just be sure that you put links for each one with clear instructions and how they are going to submit their work. And that's it.
And we had a couple more instructor contributions here, but folks who couldn't be here today. And interestingly, they are exactly in line with the forcing copies. That's pre-formatted or templated assignments that students can do and get their own copy and then upload. One of them was in Google Docs, and one of them is in Google Slides.
So Chris Coeth works in our library, and she shared that she's learned from one of the other librarians this trick or tool to make digital worksheets or processing tools, or whatever the worksheets you want to call them, because students can then each get their own copy. So she goes through the step-by-steps, and she gives credit to Callie that she learned from. So it is a step-by-step process of going to your Google Drive, again, sharing with students how they access it, creating their own worksheet, and then how you do it. So literally you can go step by step. You go up to the slash and then just insert copy.
So if only you had known, Karen, you wouldn't have had to scribble it all down. It's here on this slide.
And then the next one is just some tips or tricks. Certainly if you want to make that link shorter, you can use the URL link shortener. One of the things that we always tell students to do when they get their own copy, it's going to say copy of whatever that document or worksheet is that you've gotten titled. We always say take off the copy of and just put your first initial and last name, or first name, however you want them to submit it. So then we say that's your own personalized copy of that document. But there's lots of ways to use it. The thing I really like about it is some students are going to write a paragraph or two, some just a couple sentences, but it gives them the space to write whatever they want or to fill it. So you can just have 3 questions, but they might each end up being a page in reflection. You can add images, you can add video links right on that worksheet, so they can literally go out to the videos from the worksheet. They can see the directions right there from the worksheet. They can, go out to a web link from the worksheet and then come back and put all of their answers there and then upload to Canvas. So it's just a really great way to have students, without having to add their emails to it, they can just each have their own copy of the assignment, kind of like a worksheet.
Okay,
the problem that I was running into was we would lay out for the students the format for a slideshow, and we'd lay out what we want on each one of the slides. That didn't go as well as you would think. So what I ended up doing is creating a slide template.
So here's what the students would get if they went to the template.
Right. Anything that's in gray, they know to delete. They leave anything in the black. And, oh, by the way, they can replace these images. And then instead of having all those instructions, everything just goes right in here. You get the idea. One of the ways that makes this easy to grade is you go by the slide number. When we were asking them to put slide numbers in themselves, it did not happen. We stick all this in here, they just fill it in, keep going. Now, normally, since I couldn't edit this would have been in gray. The use the reduce your impact section would have been in gray, and they would have removed that. They know to do that. And I think normally right here, we are starting to put a rubric in so they can grade themselves, and they can grade each other when they're presenting. Having a template makes grading and evaluating this a lot easier and creates a better product. And the kids like it because they know where to go.
Jeff, I like that you could say, hey, everybody go to your slide 8 and let's talk about the data you got there. Or everybody goes, so it's that real consistent format and flow, and they don't leave anything out because there's a slide there waiting for the content.
Yeah, and I think that this kind of seemed like the theme of the most useful aspect of Google is providing them something pre-formatted and templated, because I know that's what the library folks said. That's a lot of what Mary Ellen was doing. That's what you had set up, that it just makes everything clearer and more organized for the students, and then makes it easier on the instructors and afterward to grade it because there's better consistency with it. Doesn't really take you any longer, it seems. I know that with Fanny, she sets up all these things in folders, and it's very complex with the small groups, but this seems like it's not going to take you longer to do this than it does to create a handout in the first place.
No, and it just makes life so much easier.
I like life being easier, which brings us to making life easier. Jen threw this one in here.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources. These are 3 of my favorite because they have a lot of slide templates. And I don't necessarily use all of them, but sometimes I'll get some ideas from them. They have templates for interactive notebooks. They have templates for calendars, for slides, for choice boards, game boards, lots of different things. So sometimes if I'm feeling a little stale or I want some inspiration, I will just go to one of those. The nice thing is you can download it in Google Slides, or if you're someone who likes PowerPoint, you can download it in the PowerPoint format as well. So they've got both of those. They're completely free. Typically at the very end, they've got a lot of like bonus resources or materials or things to use that kind of go with the slides. So just a nice, fun resource. Sometimes if I'm just not wanting to create my own from scratch or use one of the templates that's there, they've got some great ideas. And sometimes I've went in there and seen other things that I'm like, oh, I could do that. It's just a great idea bank.
I suggest that people go and, just go browse, but then you get lost. I go down a rabbit hole. I could look at other people's pretty templates that are free for a long time.
I like to use a lot of charts, so I might have some data from the Department of Ed for one school year, and I want to compare it to another school year. So I wasn't finding that some of the chart features were robust enough in slides. So I love Lucid Charts. So there are so many different add-ons, and if you can see where Mary's pointing on the screen right there, you scroll all the way down to the bottom to get add-ons. Go ahead and you can peek at all the different ones they have. Pear Deck pops up there right at the very beginning because it's one of the most popular. I do like looking at the different star ratings and reading a little bit about them. But all of these add-ons do different things depending on what you want or need or what you're interested in. So there's a lot of great things that you can do to really help make slides a little bit more robust. Slido is one of those new live polling features, the Q&As that a lot of people are using.
Slido is, I think it's the only app right now that Maricopa has in WebEx. So you might be able to use it that way if you were doing live online. But I don't know how it works if you, say, presented slides asynchronously to students with Slido. We'd have to mess around with it. But noun project icons, so all kinds of stuff in here.
There's a word cloud generator right there on the left side of the screen that's really fun and easy. So some of the add-ons
just really extend your capability of what you can do with slides. So if there's something you want to do and you're struggling with, check out the add-ons. There's typically an app for that. I absolutely love some of their icon generators. There's 2 different ones I use really often. One of them lets you really change the colors. So if you're using a specific hex code or a specific number or color theme with yours, you can change to whatever color you want the icons to be. You can reformat in the size. So lots of great add-ons. Just check them out if you're ever needing slides to do a little bit more than what they are currently doing. Pull Everywhere is a good one. Slides Background, the word cloud generator, just some of my favorites, but there's a lot in there. Pear Deck I didn't include on there, but that's probably my all-time favorite.
But you did talk about it as the first thing that was listed in the add-on marketplace area. And then we've put this up repeatedly today, but if you want today's slides, a copy of them, it's bit.ly/DLD-Google. It is case sensitive, so it is capital DLD -G on Google. And then we included a couple things at the end because when you look at some of the Slides Carnival or Slides Mania, they often will have some slides at the end that have extra icons and images that you can play around with, and they're editable. So we threw in the icons that we had pulled for this particular presentation, and then I messed around with them a little bit. So if you decide at any point you need Google icons for something, now you know they're here for you to use in this slideshow.
Go to the drop-down menu, Mary, just to show them where the little plus icon where they can add slides.
Here?
Yeah. So you can see we made our own templates. There's one just for Google Docs, you can do that as well. We'll do that in the next session. So sometimes I like to create templated slides for students to use. So when they add slides, maybe they have multiple of a specific thing. It's great to have those customized templates if you're working on a specific project.
And if anyone has questions or comments, wants to know how any of our panel have done something or what we found on Tuesday, Jen was laughing because she said the people who got the most excited are the people who presented for us. They're the ones who really looked at other people's presentations and went, I want to do that. Yes, Karen, you're guilty.
I think Karen and I went, escape rooms, we've got to try that.
I'll definitely see a Tech Tuesday post in my future with escape rooms. Questions, comments?
It's really good. Really good, motivating. So thanks so much for presenting us.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for being with us today. You guys have a great day.